Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sleep Seas. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day spent thinking about the world above the waves. Or perhaps you're simply the kind of person who finds peace in the slow rhythms of ocean life rather than the counting of sheep. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. You have nothing to do but rest. Let your mind settle, your breathing deepen, and your body relax as if you're floating weightless in the gentle currents of a calm sea. Because tonight we aren't simply observing the ocean floor. We're discovering one of its most remarkable and underappreciated inhabitants. We're exploring the world of sea cucumbers, the slow gardeners who tend to the ocean's vast underwater gardens without fanfare or recognition. These creatures might seem unremarkable at first glance. They don't have the fearsome reputation of sharks, the grace of dolphins, or the vibrant beauty of tropical fish. They move slowly, often lie partially buried in sand, and to many people they look like little more than lumpy vegetables scattered across the seafloor. But beneath their unassuming exterior lies a fascinating story of survival, adaptation, and ecological importance that stretches back hundreds of millions of years. Sea cucumbers are ancient architects of healthy ocean ecosystems, quiet workers whose constant labor shapes the very foundations of marine life. We'll drift gently through their world tonight, from the shallow tropical reefs where they process tons of sediment each year to the deep trenches, where strange species glide through perpetual darkness. We'll discover their remarkable defense mechanisms, their intimate relationships with other sea creatures, and the crucial role they play in keeping coral reefs and seagrass beds thriving. Some of what you hear may surprise you, and some may simply wash over you in waves of gentle knowledge as you drift towards sleep. Either way, know that you're safe here, floating peacefully through these calm waters of discovery. Before we begin our descent, if you find these ocean journeys relaxing, consider subscribing so you don't miss future explorations. And if you're still awake enough, let me know where in the world you're listening from. Now let the gentle current carry you deeper as we begin our exploration of these extraordinary creatures. Sea cucumbers belong to the phylum Echinodermata, which places them in the same family as starfish, sea urchins, brittle stars, and sea lilies. The word echinodem comes from Greek words meaning spiny-skinned, though sea cucumbers themselves have evolved to become soft and leathery rather than spiny. They're classified in the class Holothuroidea, a name that rolls off the tongue like a gentle wave across smooth stones. There are approximately 1,786 known species of sea cucumbers distributed throughout every ocean on Earth, from the sunlit shallows of tropical reefs to the crushing pressures of the deepest ocean trenches. Each species has adapted to its particular environment, developing unique characteristics while maintaining the fundamental features that make them holothurians. The most distinctive feature of sea cucumbers, the one that immediately sets them apart from their echinoderm relatives, is their body shape. While starfish spread their arms in radial symmetry and sea urchins maintain their spherical form, sea cucumbers have stretched themselves lengthwise, creating an elongated cylindrical body that resembles the vegetable for which they're named. This body plan, unusual among echinoderms, represents millions of years of evolutionary adaptation to life on the seafloor. They've essentially taken the radial symmetry of their ancestors and stretched it along a horizontal axis, creating a front end with a mouth surrounded by tentacles and a rear end with an anus. It's a simple body plan, but one that has proven remarkably successful. Most sea cucumbers measure between 10 and 30 centimeters in length, roughly the size of a large cucumber you might find at a market. But the variation in size across species is extraordinary. The smallest known species, Rhabdomolgus ruber, measures just 3 millimeters long, barely visible to the naked eye. At the other extreme, the snake sea cucumber Synapta maculata can stretch to over 3 meters in length, longer than most humans are tall. This incredible size range reflects the diverse ecological niches that sea cucumbers have evolved to fill across the ocean's varied habitats. Their bodies are covered in leathery skin that feels thick and slightly rough to the touch, quite different from the hard plates of sea urchins or the firm arms of starfish. This skin contains tiny skeletal elements called ossicles, microscopic plates of calcium carbonate that give the body some structure without creating a rigid shell. These ossicles are scattered loosely beneath the skin, embedded in connective tissue. In most species, they're so small and dispersed that they're invisible to the naked eye, though in some species they cluster together to form visible patches or even armor-like plates. The arrangement and shape of these ossicles are so distinctive that scientists use them to identify species, examining them under microscopes to distinguish between closely related forms. Beneath the leathery skin lies a body wall composed of layers of muscle and connective tissue. These muscles allow sea cucumbers to contract and expand their bodies, to crawl slowly across the seafloor, and to perform the remarkable feat of changing their body consistency from soft to firm. This ability to alter their stiffness is controlled by specialized cells that can change the properties of collagen fibers in their connective tissue, essentially allowing the animal to become rigid or flexible on demand. It's a form of biological engineering that scientists are still working to fully understand, a mutable collagenous tissue that functions almost like a biological hydraulic system. Inside this muscular body wall lies the coelom, the main body cavity that houses the internal organs. The coelom is divided by 3 longitudinal mesenteries, tissue sheets that provide support and attachment points for the organs suspended within. Unlike more complex animals, sea cucumbers have a relatively simple internal anatomy, consisting primarily of 3 main systems: digestive, respiratory, and reproductive. This simplicity, however, belies the sophisticated ways these systems function and interact. The digestive system begins at the mouth, surrounded by a ring of retractable tentacles. These tentacles, which can number anywhere from 8 to 30 depending on the species, are actually modified tube feet, specialized appendages unique to echinoderms. Each tentacle is covered in sticky mucus and lined with sensory cells that help the animal detect food particles. The tentacles can be pulled completely inside the mouth for protection or extended out to gather food from the surrounding water or sediment. Their shape varies dramatically between species, reflecting different feeding strategies. Some species have simple finger-like tentacles for scooping sediment, while others possess elaborately branched structures resembling tiny trees, perfect for filtering plankton from the water. Behind the mouth lies a short pharynx, followed by a long intestine that winds through the body cavity, looping back and forth several times before reaching the cloaca and anus at the rear end. This intestine is where the real work of digestion happens. As sediment or organic matter passes through, specialized cells extract nutrients while breaking down organic compounds. The efficiency of this digestive system is remarkable. A single sea cucumber can process and ingest more than 45 kilograms of sediment in a year, extracting every bit of nutritional value before expelling the clean sediment back onto the seafloor. Connected to the cloaca are 2 remarkable structures called respiratory trees. These are branching tubular organs that extend from the rear of the animal deep into the body cavity, sometimes reaching all the way to the front end. Sea cucumbers breathe by drawing water in through their anus, filling these respiratory trees with oxygenated seawater. The thin walls of the trees allow oxygen to diffuse into the coelomic fluid while carbon dioxide diffuses out. After a few moments, the animal contracts its body wall muscles and expels the deoxygenated water back through the anus, then draws in a fresh breath. It's an unusual way to breathe, but perfectly suited to an animal that spends its life with its rear end exposed while its front end burrows in sediment. The water vascular system, a defining feature of all echinoderms, provides hydraulic power for movement and manipulation. This system consists of a network of fluid-filled canals that radiate throughout the body. A ring canal circles around the pharynx near the mouth, and from this ring, 5 radial canals extend along the length of the body, corresponding to the 5-part symmetry hidden beneath the cucumber-like exterior. These radial canals connect to hundreds of tube feet, small hydraulic projections that can extend and retract by controlling the water pressure within them. By increasing pressure in a tube foot, the animal can extend it outward. By releasing pressure, the foot retracts. 3 of the 5 rows of tube feet are located on the underside of the animal, the ventral surface, and these are well developed with suction cup tips that help the animal grip the seafloor and pull itself along. The other 2 rows, on the dorsal surface, are typically reduced to small sensory papillae, or may be absent entirely. Sea cucumbers have no true brain, just a simple ring of neural tissue that encircles the mouth and sends nerve cords running the length of the body beneath each row of tube feet. This nervous system is remarkably decentralized. Studies have shown that sea cucumbers can continue to function normally even if the nerve ring is surgically removed, demonstrating that coordination happens through local networks rather than centralized control. They have no eyes, no ears, no centralized processing center. Yet they respond to their environment with remarkable precision. They can sense touch through nerve endings scattered throughout their skin, detect chemicals in the water that signal food or danger, and even sense light and dark through photoreceptive cells on their body surface. The reproductive system is equally straightforward. A single branched gonad occupies space near the front of the body cavity, connected to the outside world by a single duct that opens on the dorsal surface just behind the tentacles. In most species, individuals are either male or female, though telling them apart externally is nearly impossible. The gonad swells with eggs or sperm as breeding season approaches, sometimes becoming so large it fills a substantial portion of the body cavity. When conditions are right, usually triggered by temperature changes or lunar cycles, the animals release their gametes into the water, where fertilization occurs externally in the open ocean. This basic body plan, refined over hundreds of millions of years, has proven remarkably adaptable. Different species have modified it in countless ways to suit their particular lifestyles. Some have lost their tube feet entirely, becoming slender worm-like creatures that burrow through sediment. Others have developed elaborate tentacles for filter feeding in currents. Some have become nearly spherical, while others remain long and snake-like. The colors range from dull browns and grays that blend with sediment to brilliant reds, oranges, purples, and even patterns of spots and stripes. Each variation represents a solution to the challenges of surviving in a particular ocean habitat. The ocean floor is home to sea cucumbers of every description, scattered across every conceivable habitat from the poles to the tropics, from the intertidal zone to the abyssal plains. They are primarily benthic animals, meaning they live on or in the bottom substrate, though their larval forms drift as plankton, and a few species have adapted to swimming in the water column. The vast majority, however, spend their entire adult lives in contact with the seafloor, moving slowly through their territories as they feed and grow. In shallow tropical waters, sea cucumbers can be found on coral reefs, in seagrass beds, and across sandy lagoons. These are often the most colorful species, the ones most likely to be spotted by snorkelers and divers. They nestle among coral rubble, half buried in sand between seagrass blades, or rest openly on flat expanses of reef flat. Some species prefer areas of strong water movement, where currents bring a steady supply of food particles. Others seek sheltered lagoons where fine sediments accumulate in thick layers. The diversity of microhabitats within a single reef system can support dozens of different sea cucumber species, each specialized for its particular niche. Temperate coastlines host their own communities of sea cucumbers, often dominated by different species, adapted to cooler waters and seasonal changes. Rocky reefs provide hiding places among boulders and crevices, while muddy bays and estuaries accumulate the organic-rich sediments that many deposit-feeding species prefer. These cooler water species tend to be less colorful than their tropical relatives, often wearing camouflage patterns of brown, black, and gray that help them blend with rocks and kelp. As depth increases and light fades, different species take over. The continental shelf, extending from the coast to depths of around 200 meters, supports specialized communities adapted to reduced light and colder temperatures. Here, sea cucumbers often reach higher densities than in shallower water, carpeting the seafloor in some areas. They feed on the steady rain of organic particles drifting down from the sunlit surface waters above, processing sediments enriched with the remains of plankton and larger organisms. Beyond the continental shelf, in the bathyal and abyssal zones, sea cucumbers become among the dominant visible animals. In these deep reaches, where sunlight never penetrates and pressure increases to crushing levels, specialized holothurians have evolved remarkable adaptations. Many deep-sea species are translucent or ghostly white, lacking the pigments needed in sunlit waters. Some have developed elaborate fin-like structures that allow them to swim above the bottom, while others have become gelatinous, their bodies mostly water with minimal structural tissue. These deep-sea forms glide slowly through the perpetual darkness, processing the rain of organic matter that settles from thousands of meters above. The deepest parts of the ocean, the Hadal trenches that plunge to depths beyond 6,000 meters, host their own suite of sea cucumber species. These are among the most specialized animals on Earth, adapted to pressures that would instantly crush most surface-dwelling creatures. They've been observed by deep submersible cameras, pale forms drifting across barren plains of sediment or gathered in depressions where organic matter accumulates. At these depths, sea cucumbers can represent the majority of animal biomass, the dominant large animals in an ecosystem supported entirely by the slow rain of organic particles from far above. Movement for a sea cucumber is generally a slow and deliberate affair. They are among the ocean's most patient travelers, rarely moving more than a few meters in a day. The 3 rows of tube feet on their underside provide the primary means of locomotion. The animal extends the tube feet at its front end, gripping the substrate with their suction cups, then contracts its body muscles to pull itself forward, releasing the rear feet and repeating the process. It's similar to how an earthworm moves through soil, extending and contracting in waves of peristaltic motion. The pace is glacial by most standards, perhaps a few centimeters per minute at most, but perfectly adequate for an animal whose food is literally beneath it. Some species have reduced or lost their tube feet entirely and move by different means. These forms generate waves of muscular contraction that ripple along their bodies, pushing against the sediment to create forward motion. Others barely move at all, remaining in the same spot for days or weeks, simply rotating slowly in place as they process the sediment immediately around them. A few specialized species have developed the ability to become buoyant, filling themselves with water until they can float just above the bottom, drifting with currents to new feeding areas before settling back down. The daily life of a sea cucumber follows simple rhythms dictated by food availability and safety. Many species are more active at night, emerging from hiding places or becoming more mobile when the threat from visual predators decreases. They can sense the day-night cycle even in relatively deep water through sensitive photoreceptors in their skin. As darkness falls, they extend their feeding tentacles further, move more boldly across open areas, and increase their feeding activity. With the return of daylight, they often retreat to crevices, burrow deeper into sediment, or simply remain motionless, relying on camouflage and chemical defenses for protection. Some species exhibit remarkable site fidelity, returning to the same hiding spot day after day. Scientists have marked individual sea cucumbers and tracked them over weeks or months, finding that many individuals establish small home ranges that they rarely leave. This behavior makes sense for animals that process sediment. By moving in a slow circuit around a home base, they systematically work through the available food without depleting any one area too quickly. By the time they return to where they started, new organic matter has settled or been carried in by currents, ready to be processed again. The relationship between sea cucumbers and the seafloor is intimate and constant. They are not merely visitors to the bottom, but integral parts of the benthic ecosystem, so thoroughly integrated with the substrate that it's sometimes hard to tell where the animal ends and the seafloor begins. Their feeding activities literally reshape the physical characteristics of the sediment, altering particle size, sorting grains, mixing layers, and changing chemical properties. This process, called bioturbation, makes sea cucumbers ecosystem engineers, organisms whose activities create or modify habitats for other species. Feeding is the central activity of a sea cucumber's existence, and the strategies they've evolved to gather food are wonderfully varied. Holothurians can be divided into 2 main feeding groups based on how they obtain their nutrition: suspension feeders and deposit feeders. Each strategy comes with its own set of adaptations and behaviors. Suspension feeders, also called filter feeders, capture food particles floating in the water above the seafloor. These sea cucumbers typically have elaborate, tree-like tentacles covered in sticky mucus. They position themselves in areas of water movement, often on top of rocks or other elevated surfaces where currents flow strongly. The tentacles are extended outward into the current, forming a net that captures passing particles of phytoplankton, zooplankton, detritus, and any other organic matter small enough to stick to the mucus. When a tentacle becomes loaded with captured food, the animal bends it down and inserts it into its mouth, scraping off the accumulated particles before extending the tentacle back into the current. It's a methodical process, each tentacle taking its turn, creating a gentle rhythm of capture and consumption that can continue for hours. The tentacles of suspension feeders are marvels of biological engineering. Under magnification, they reveal an intricate branching structure, dividing and subdividing into ever finer branches that maximize the surface area available for capturing particles. The mucus coating these tentacles contains compounds that help particles stick while also protecting the delicate tissues from abrasion by sand grains and other rough particles. Some species can control which particles they capture by adjusting the thickness and stickiness of their mucus, essentially choosing their meal with chemical precision. Deposit feeders, by contrast, feed on organic matter mixed with or settled on the seafloor sediment. This group includes the majority of sea cucumber species and represents the animals most people picture when they think of these creatures. Deposit feeders have shorter, stouter tentacles, often shaped like shovels or fingers, perfect for scooping sediment and transferring it to the mouth. They literally eat the seafloor, ingesting sand, mud, and everything mixed within it. The feeding process for deposit feeders looks deceptively simple. The animal extends its tentacles and pushes them into the sediment, gathering material and transferring it to the mouth. What's remarkable is not the mechanism but the volume. Some species can consume their own body weight in sediment every single day. Over the course of a year, a single large sea cucumber might process 45 kilograms of sediment or more. Multiply that by the sometimes dense populations that can exist in rich areas, and you begin to appreciate the enormous volume of material moving through these animals. But sea cucumbers aren't simply eating sand. Within the sediment, mixed among the mineral grains, are the nutrients they're actually after. Bits of dead and decaying organic matter, bacteria, microscopic algae, living on sand grains, larvae of other animals, small worms and crustaceans, and a host of other edible materials. The sea cucumber's digestive system is remarkably efficient at extracting these nutritious components while rejecting the indigestible sand and silt. As sediment passes through the long intestine, specialized cells in the gut lining absorb organic molecules. Bacteria in the gut assist with breaking down complex organic compounds, functioning as a living digestive system within a digestive system. The sea cucumber absorbs nutrients including proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, extracting energy and building blocks for growth and reproduction. Meanwhile, the mineral grains pass through relatively unchanged, though thoroughly cleaned of any organic coating. Studies analyzing the fecal material expelled by sea cucumbers have found it to be remarkably clean, with organic content often reduced by 70% or more compared to the ingested sediment. This leaves behind sediment that is finer, more homogeneous, and cleaner than what went in. The fecal castings produced by deposit-feeding sea cucumbers often appear as distinctive coils or strings of sediment, sometimes piled in small mounds on the seafloor. These castings are important features of the benthic environment, creating microhabitats for other organisms and contributing to sediment transport and mixing. The tentacles themselves show fascinating adaptations to different feeding strategies. Species feeding on fine, soft sediments often have peltate tentacles, shaped like short shovels, perfect for scooping loose material. Species feeding on coarser sediments may have digitate tentacles, finger-like projections that can sort through particles, selecting smaller, more digestible ones while rejecting larger grains. Some species have modified tentacles that can dig into harder substrates, excavating buried organic matter. The diversity of tentacle forms reflects millions of years of evolution fine-tuning feeding structures to match food sources. The amount of food available drives many aspects of sea cucumber biology. In areas rich with organic matter, such as near river mouths where terrestrial nutrients wash into the ocean, or below areas of high surface productivity, where organic particles rain down steadily, sea cucumbers can reach high densities. These populations process enormous volumes of sediment, significantly affecting nutrient cycling and ecosystem function. In nutrient-poor areas such as deep oceanic plains far from land, sea cucumbers are typically smaller, less abundant, and more specialized for extracting nutrition from impoverished sediments. Some species have evolved specialized feeding behaviors that go beyond simple deposit or suspension feeding. Certain holothurians follow tracks left by other animals, feeding selectively on the disturbed sediment that often contains freshly exposed organic matter. Others position themselves at the bases of coral colonies or sponges, capturing particles that wash off these structures. A few species have even been observed feeding on animal carcasses, transitioning from their normal diet to take advantage of concentrated protein sources when available. The daily feeding rhythm varies among species and depends on local conditions. Many tropical species feed primarily at night, their tentacles extended and active in the darkness when visual predators are less threatening. Temperate and deep-sea species often feed continuously, undeterred by the day-night cycle since they live in dimness or darkness. Some species appear to have tidal feeding patterns, most active during certain tidal stages when current patterns favor food delivery or when exposure to predators is minimized. The capacity of sea cucumbers to process sediment is not just a quirk of their biology, but a fundamental ecosystem service. Through their constant feeding, they are performing crucial work that maintains the health of benthic communities. They are the gardeners of the ocean floor, tilling the soil, removing waste, and preparing the ground for new growth. The true ecological importance of sea cucumbers becomes apparent when we examine their role in nutrient cycling. These animals are biological processing plants, taking in sediment loaded with organic matter and converting it into forms other organisms can use. This transformation happens through several interconnected processes that collectively make sea cucumbers keystone species in many marine ecosystems. The first and most visible contribution is bioturbation. As sea cucumbers move through and ingest sediment, they physically mix layers that would otherwise remain stratified. Surface sediments exposed to oxygen become mixed with deeper anoxic layers. This mixing affects chemical gradients, alters bacterial communities, and influences the decomposition of organic matter. The constant churning prevents sediments from becoming compacted and anoxic, maintaining a healthier environment for the countless small organisms that live in sediment pores. This bioturbation also affects sediment grain size distribution. Sea cucumbers tend to ingest smaller particles preferentially, as these are easier to process and often have higher organic content. The fecal material they produce is even finer, as the grinding action of their digestive system breaks particles down further. Over time, this selective feeding and fine-grained excretion can change the physical character of the sediment across large areas. In some locations, scientists can identify areas of high sea cucumber activity simply by analyzing sediment samples for grain size distribution. The breaking down of organic matter in sea cucumber guts accelerates decomposition. Bacteria in their intestines work on organic compounds, breaking complex molecules into simpler forms. This bacterial activity continues even after the material is excreted, as beneficial bacteria in the fecal material continue processing nutrients. Studies have found that sediments near sea cucumber fecal castings show elevated bacterial activity and faster rates of organic matter breakdown compared to unprocessed sediments. Perhaps most importantly, sea cucumbers release nutrients in forms other organisms can immediately use. As organic matter is broken down in their guts, soluble nutrients are released and excreted into the water. Chief among these are ammonium, a form of nitrogen, and phosphate, a phosphorus compound. These nutrients are fundamental limiting factors in many marine ecosystems, especially in tropical waters. By converting bound nutrients in organic matter into dissolved forms, sea cucumbers make nutrition available to primary producers like phytoplankton, algae, and seagrass. The amounts involved are substantial. Research measuring nutrient excretion rates from sea cucumbers has found that healthy populations can release significant quantities of ammonium into the water column. In some seagrass beds and coral reef environments, sea cucumbers may provide a considerable portion of the nitrogen that supports primary production. This creates a tight recycling loop. Organic matter from dead algae and other sources settles to the bottom. Sea cucumbers consume and process it, releasing nutrients that fuel new algal growth, which eventually dies and settles to start the cycle again. This nutrient recycling is especially critical in oligotrophic environments, tropical waters that are essentially oceanic deserts with very low nutrient concentrations. Coral reefs thrive in these nutrient-poor waters, partly because of efficient recycling by animals like sea cucumbers. The nutrients released by these bottom feeders help sustain the coral-algae symbiosis and fuel the productivity of reef ecosystems. Without this recycling, many reef systems would struggle to maintain their current levels of diversity and abundance. The benefits extend to seagrass ecosystems as well. Seagrasses are flowering plants that grow underwater in shallow coastal areas, creating underwater meadows that support diverse communities. These plants require nitrogen and phosphorus to grow, and in many seagrass beds, these nutrients are in short supply. Sea cucumbers help address this limitation. Studies in seagrass beds with healthy sea cucumber populations have measured higher rates of seagrass growth and increased leaf extension compared to areas where sea cucumbers have been removed. The connection is clear. Sea cucumbers processing sediment release nutrients that seagrass roots absorb, fueling faster growth. Recent research has revealed another crucial function. Sea cucumbers help buffer ocean acidification. When organic matter decomposes in sediments, it consumes oxygen and produces carbon dioxide, which dissolves in water to form carbonic acid. This acidifies sediment-poor water and the water immediately above the seafloor. Sea cucumbers, through their feeding and excretion, increase the alkalinity of the water. The exact mechanisms are still being studied, but the effect appears to result from the digestion process and the types of compounds released. This increase in alkalinity can help neutralize the acidity, essentially creating a chemical buffer that protects sensitive organisms like corals and mollusks from acidic conditions. This buffering effect may become increasingly important as atmospheric carbon dioxide levels rise and oceans absorb more CO2, becoming more acidic overall. Sea cucumbers won't solve ocean acidification, the problem is far too large, but in local areas their presence can moderate acidic conditions and provide refuges where calcifying organisms like corals and shellfish can continue to build their skeletons and shells. The sediment processing by sea cucumbers also affects oxygen levels in benthic environments. By mixing oxygenated surface waters into sediments, and by preventing the buildup of organic matter that would consume oxygen during decomposition, they help maintain better oxygenation. This benefits all the small invertebrates, worms and microorganisms that live in sediments and require oxygen to survive. The activities of sea cucumbers even influence carbon cycling in marine ecosystems. Organic carbon buried in sediments can remain locked away for long periods, effectively removing it from the active carbon cycle. Sea cucumbers alter this process by bringing buried carbon back to the surface, making it available for bacterial decomposition. This can release carbon back into the water column as carbon dioxide or dissolved organic carbon, reintegrating it into food webs. While this might seem counterproductive from a carbon storage perspective, it's part of the natural carbon cycling that has shaped marine ecosystems for millions of years. In areas where organic pollution affects coastal waters, such as near fish farms or sewage outfalls, sea cucumbers can help remediate conditions. They consume excess organic matter, reducing the oxygen-depleting loads and processing nutrients that might otherwise fuel harmful algal blooms. Some aquaculture operations have begun integrating sea cucumbers into fish farming systems specifically for this purpose, creating polyculture systems where sea cucumbers clean up waste from fish while providing an additional harvest product. The ecosystem services provided by sea cucumbers have been valued in economic terms in some regions. Scientists have calculated that the nutrient recycling, bioturbation and sediment processing provided by healthy sea cucumber populations could be worth thousands of dollars per hectare per year if these services had to be replaced by artificial means. This economic perspective helps emphasize that sea cucumbers are not just curiosities but vital working members of ocean ecosystems whose presence maintains conditions that countless other species depend upon. When sea cucumbers are removed from an ecosystem through overfishing, the effects ripple outward. Sediments become less well mixed, organic matter accumulates, oxygen levels may decline, and nutrient recycling slows. The overall health and productivity of the ecosystem can suffer. Research comparing areas with healthy sea cucumber populations to areas where they've been removed has documented these declines, showing reduced coral growth, slower seagrass expansion, and changes in sediment chemistry. The slow gardeners of the ocean floor are in fact essential maintenance workers whose constant labor keeps the entire garden healthy. Sea cucumbers face numerous threats in the ocean, from predators that would gladly make a meal of their soft bodies to diseases and environmental stresses. Yet these seemingly vulnerable creatures have evolved a remarkable arsenal of defense mechanisms, some of the most unusual and effective in the animal kingdom. These defenses range from simple camouflage to dramatic acts of self-sacrifice that would seem to kill the animal, but instead save its life. The first line of defense for many species is simply staying hidden. Their coloration often matches their surroundings perfectly. Species living on sandy bottoms are usually pale tan or gray, blending seamlessly with sand. Those on rocky reefs may be mottled brown and black, matching the colors of rock and algae. Some species are nearly transparent, becoming almost invisible against the seafloor. This camouflage, combined with their slow movement, makes them difficult for visual predators to spot. Chemical defenses form another major protective strategy. Many sea cucumber species contain toxic compounds called saponins in their body walls and internal tissues. These chemicals taste terrible and can be harmful or even fatal to predators. Saponins disrupt cell membranes, causing damage to delicate gill tissues in fish or poisoning predators that swallow them. The concentration of these toxins can be quite high, enough to kill small fish that bite into a sea cucumber. Some species even release saponins into the surrounding water when disturbed, creating a toxic cloud that drives predators away. Certain tropical cultures have long known about these toxins and have used them for fishing. Crushed sea cucumber tissue placed in tidal pools can stun or kill fish trapped there, making them easy to collect. While this practice is now discouraged or illegal in many places, it demonstrates just how potent sea cucumber toxins can be. The very presence of these toxins also helps explain why sea cucumbers, despite their soft bodies and slow movement, have relatively few predators compared to many other marine invertebrates. Some species possess hook-like structures in their skin called ossicles that can be exposed when the animal is disturbed. These microscopic hooks catch on the skin or mouths of predators, making the sea cucumber difficult and uncomfortable to eat. The animal essentially becomes covered in tiny barbs, deterring further attack. These hook-like ossicles are made of calcium carbonate, the same material as shells and coral skeletons, but shaped into wickedly effective deterrent structures. But the most dramatic and fascinating defense mechanisms are evisceration and the expulsion of Cuvierian tubules. These are active defenses, spectacular displays of biological adaptation that seem almost impossibly strange until you understand the reasoning behind them. Evisceration is exactly what it sounds like. The sea cucumber expels its internal organs through either its mouth or anus, depending on the species. When severely threatened, stressed, or injured, the animal contracts its body wall muscles sharply. This creates enormous internal pressure that causes the body wall to rupture, usually at natural weak points. Parts of the digestive system, the respiratory trees, and even the gonads can be expelled in a tangled mass of tissue. This expelled material sometimes contains toxins or can simply distract or confuse a predator, giving the sea cucumber time to escape. The biological mechanisms behind evisceration are complex. Special cells in the connective tissue can rapidly change the properties of collagen fibers, essentially liquefying the attachments that hold organs in place. Over a period of just a few minutes, structures that were firmly anchored become detached and can be expelled. It's a controlled demolition of the animal's internal architecture, triggered by neural signals responding to stress or danger. What makes this defense truly remarkable is that sea cucumbers survive evisceration and can regenerate their lost organs. After expelling its guts, the sea cucumber seals the rupture and begins the regeneration process. Special cells called dedifferentiated cells, which have the capacity to become any cell type needed, migrate to the injury site and begin building new organs. Within a few weeks, the animal has regenerated a functional digestive system. During this time, it survives by absorbing nutrients directly through its body wall, drawing energy from dissolved organic matter in the water. The ability to regrow entire organ systems is astonishing. It involves activating genes that control development, organizing cells into complex structures, and connecting new organs to existing tissues like the body wall and water vascular system. Scientists studying regeneration have found that sea cucumbers can regrow not just simple structures, but entire anatomically correct organ systems, complete with proper connections and functional capacity. This regenerative ability rivals that of salamanders and is far beyond what most animals, including humans, can achieve. Cuvierian tubules represent an even more specialized defense system found in certain families of sea cucumbers, particularly in the family Holothuriidae. These are clusters of fine, white, sticky tubules attached to the base of the left respiratory tree, stored harmlessly inside the body cavity. Each sea cucumber may have several hundred of these tubules, coiled and waiting near the rear end of the animal. When threatened, the sea cucumber faces its rear end toward the source of danger and contracts sharply. The cloaca tears open, and water from the respiratory tree is forcefully injected into the tubules. This causes them to rapidly elongate, expanding to up to 20 times their original length in a matter of seconds. As they emerge from the anus, they transform from short, coiled structures into long, sticky threads that entangle anything they touch. The stickiness of Cuvierian tubules is remarkable. They adhere to surfaces within seconds, forming an incredibly strong bond. The adhesive is unlike any other natural glue. a complex mixture of proteins that create both chemical and mechanical bonds. Recent genetic studies have revealed that the proteins responsible for this adhesiveness contain structures similar to amyloids, proteins that can form extremely stable fibers. In humans, amyloids are associated with diseases like Alzheimer's, but in sea cucumbers, these proteins have been co-opted for defense, creating one of nature's strongest biological adhesives. A predator encountering Cuvierian tubules quickly finds itself in trouble. The sticky threads wrap around legs, claws, and mouthparts, entangling and immobilizing the attacker. Crabs, one of the main predators of sea cucumbers, can become so thoroughly bound in tubules that they can't move their legs or claws, essentially becoming wrapped in sticky string. Fish that try to bite a sea cucumber may find their jaws glued shut or their gills clogged with sticky filaments. The tubules also contain toxins that add a chemical weapon to the mechanical trap. Meanwhile, the sea cucumber detaches the tubules at their base and crawls away, leaving its attacker struggling with the sticky mass. Like internal organs after evisceration, Cuvierian tubules are regenerated over the following weeks. The animal doesn't use all its tubules in one encounter. It can carefully regulate how many are expelled, using just enough to deter the immediate threat while keeping a reserve for future encounters. This measured response makes the defense more sustainable, allowing the animal to defend itself multiple times before needing to fully regenerate its tubules. The regeneration of Cuvierian tubules follows a fascinating process. First, phagocytic cells clean the site where tubules were detached, removing debris and preparing the respiratory tree for new growth. Then, undifferentiated cells begin dividing and forming new tubular structures. These structures grow, branching from the respiratory tree and developing the specialized tissues that will make them functional weapons. The cells that produce the adhesive proteins, the muscular layers that allow rapid elongation, and the outer coating that remains inert until activation. Within about 3 to 5 weeks, a full complement of tubules has regenerated, and the animal is ready to defend itself again. Recent research has explored the remarkable properties of sea cucumber collagen and the proteins in Cuvierian tubules, hoping to develop biomedical applications. The adhesives might inspire new surgical glues that work in wet environments, something conventional adhesives struggle with. The collagen, which can switch between soft and rigid states under nervous control, might lead to new materials for implants or prosthetics. The regenerative capacity of sea cucumbers might provide insights into how to stimulate tissue regeneration in humans. These applications are still in early stages, but they demonstrate that studying sea cucumber defenses offers benefits beyond understanding these animals themselves. Other less dramatic defensive behaviors also serve sea cucumbers well. Some species can liquefy their bodies, essentially melting and flowing into narrow crevices to escape danger. Others become extremely rigid, making themselves difficult to swallow. Some species exhibit autotomy, detaching parts of their body to distract predators, similar to how some lizards drop their tails. All these mechanisms, from simple camouflage to spectacular evisceration, reflect millions of years of evolutionary refinement, each species developing the defenses best suited to the threats it faces. Despite these impressive defenses, sea cucumbers do have predators. Certain fish have evolved resistance to their toxins, or ways to handle them safely. Some large starfish specialize in eating sea cucumbers, turning their stomachs inside out to digest the soft tissues. Sea turtles, particularly green sea turtles, consume sea cucumbers regularly, apparently unaffected by the toxins. And humans, of course, have become perhaps the most significant predator, harvesting sea cucumbers in enormous numbers for food and traditional medicine, a threat no biological defense can fully counter. The reproduction and development of sea cucumbers follows patterns both familiar and exotic, combining elements common to many marine invertebrates with unique twists specific to these animals. Most species reproduce sexually, though a few have evolved asexual reproduction as well. The life cycle encompasses a remarkable transformation from microscopic drifting larvae to bottom-dwelling adults, a journey fraught with danger that only a tiny fraction of individuals survive. Sexual reproduction in sea cucumbers typically follows a broadcast spawning strategy. This means that males and females release their gametes, sperm and eggs, directly into the water where fertilization occurs externally. The trigger for spawning varies among species but usually involves environmental cues that ensure many individuals spawn simultaneously, increasing the chances of successful fertilization. Rising water temperatures in spring or summer often initiate spawning. Changes in day length or photoperiod can also serve as triggers, as can lunar cycles, with some species spawning around full or new moons. Chemical communication plays a crucial role. When one animal begins spawning, it releases chemical signals that stimulate nearby individuals to spawn as well. This synchronization is critical because eggs and sperm remain viable for only a short time, and the vast ocean can quickly dilute released gametes. When many individuals spawn together, the water becomes temporarily rich with eggs and sperm, and fertilization rates soar. Scientists observing spawning events have described the water becoming milky or cloudy as millions of gametes are released, a visual testament to the scale of reproduction. The spawning behavior itself can be quite dramatic. Many species adopt a distinctive posture, raising their front ends high above the bottom in what's been described as a cobra-like stance. This elevates the genital opening into the water column, helping currents carry gametes away from the seafloor, where they might otherwise settle uselessly. The animals often sway or rock during spawning, further aiding dispersal. Males typically spawn first, releasing clouds of sperm that stimulate females to release their eggs. A single female can release anywhere from tens of thousands to over 1 million eggs in a single spawning event, depending on her size and species. The eggs are typically spherical and small, usually around 100 to 200 micrometers in diameter, barely visible to the naked eye. They're surrounded by a jelly-like coating that helps protect them and may contain chemical cues that assist sperm in finding and penetrating the egg. Once a sperm successfully fertilizes an egg, the jelly coat changes chemically to prevent other sperm from entering, a process called the fast block to polyspermy. The fertilized egg, now a zygote, begins dividing within hours. Development proceeds through predictable stages. The single-celled zygote divides into 2 cells, then 4, then 8, doubling repeatedly as cells become smaller and more numerous. After about a day, the embryo has become a hollow ball of cells called a blastula. This ball then folds in on itself in a process called gastrulation, forming the basic body plan, with an inner layer that will become the gut and an outer layer that will become the skin and nervous system. By about 2 to 3 days after fertilization, in warm tropical waters, the embryo has transformed into a swimming larva. The first larval stage is called the auriculaire. This creature bears little resemblance to an adult sea cucumber. It's roughly oval-shaped, usually less than 1 millimeter long, and swims by means of a long band of cilia that wraps around its body like a belt. This ciliated band both propels the larva through the water and creates feeding currents that draw phytoplankton and other tiny food particles to the mouth. The auricularia is transparent or nearly so, essentially invisible except under a microscope or in certain lighting. It drifts as plankton, carried by currents, potentially traveling great distances from where it was spawned. The auricularia stage may last anywhere from a few days to several weeks, depending on species and environmental conditions. During this time, the larva feeds and grows, developing the internal structures that will transform it into the next stage. When conditions are right, usually when the larva has reached a certain size and developmental state, it undergoes a metamorphosis into the doliolaria stage. The doliolaria looks quite different from the auricularia. It's barrel-shaped, with 3 to 5 rings of cilia encircling its body rather than a single continuous band. This stage is typically non-feeding, relying on energy reserves accumulated during the auricularia stage. The doliolaria is a transitional form, preparing for settlement and metamorphosis into a bottom-dwelling juvenile. It begins to lose its symmetrical shape, and internal organs start rearranging into the configuration found in adult sea cucumbers. After a period of swimming, the doliolaria begins seeking suitable settlement substrate. This is one of the most critical moments in a sea cucumber's life. The larva must find an appropriate place to settle, a location with suitable sediment type, adequate food, and reasonable protection from predators. Sensory systems help the larva detect chemical and physical cues that indicate good settlement sites. In some species, larvae preferentially settle near adult sea cucumbers, perhaps detecting chemicals released by the adults that signal a favorable environment. Settlement and metamorphosis into the next stage. The pentacula happens relatively quickly once an appropriate site is found. The larva attaches to the bottom and begins a dramatic transformation. The ciliary rings disappear, replaced by 5 tentacles that begin growing around the developing mouth. These tentacles are the first distinctly sea cucumber-like features to appear, and they give this stage its name. Pentacula means 5 rays. The body elongates and begins to take on the cylindrical form of an adult. Tube feet develop along the body. The internal organs complete their reorganization, and within days, a tiny juvenile sea cucumber, usually less than a millimeter long, is crawling across the seafloor. The juvenile stage is prolonged and represents the period of greatest mortality. These tiny sea cucumbers are vulnerable to countless predators, from small fish to invertebrates that view them as prey. They typically hide in crevices, under rocks or buried in sediment, emerging only to feed. Growth is slow, often taking several years to reach adult size and sexual maturity. During this time, the juveniles gradually develop the full complement of features seen in adults, the complete set of tube feet, the internal organs reaching full development, and the body achieving its adult form and coloration. Sexual maturity is reached at different ages and sizes depending on species and environmental conditions. In warm tropical waters with abundant food, some species may mature in 1 to 2 years. In cold, temperate waters or nutrient-poor environments, maturity may take 5 years or longer. The gonad develops gradually, and when the animal reaches reproductive size, it begins participating in spawning events, completing the life cycle. Some species have evolved variations on this basic reproductive pattern. A few are hermaphroditic, possessing both male and female reproductive organs, though most still require mating with another individual. Some species in cooler waters have evolved internal fertilization and brooding. Females in these species retain fertilized eggs inside their body cavity, providing protection during early development. The juveniles may emerge as advanced larvae or even as tiny fully formed sea cucumbers, skipping the planktonic stages entirely. This strategy sacrifices dispersal ability in exchange for higher survival rates of offspring. Asexual reproduction occurs in some species through fission, the splitting of one individual into 2. The sea cucumber constricts in the middle, essentially pinching itself in half. Each half then regenerates the missing portions, and where there was one animal, there are now 2. This form of reproduction can occur naturally in some species or may be triggered by stress or injury. It's most common in certain groups that already possess strong regenerative abilities. Asexual reproduction allows rapid population growth in favorable conditions and can help maintain populations even when individuals are too scattered to successfully broadcast spawn. The larval development of sea cucumbers links these bottom-dwelling adults to the open ocean's planktonic realm. The larvae, drifting in currents, face entirely different challenges than adults. They must avoid planktonic predators like jellyfish and larval fish, while finding enough phytoplankton to eat and grow. They experience temperature changes, turbulence, and the constant motion of ocean currents that can carry them far from where they were spawned. This dispersal serves an important ecological function, allowing sea cucumbers to colonize new areas and maintain genetic connections between geographically separated populations. Climate change and ocean acidification pose new challenges for sea cucumber reproduction and larval development. Studies examining the effects of warmer, more acidic conditions on sea cucumber larvae have found that development rates can increase but survival may decrease. The changes in ocean chemistry can affect larval skeleton formation and metabolic processes, potentially reducing the number of larvae that successfully complete development and settle. These impacts remain areas of active research, but they raise concerns about how sea cucumber populations will fare as oceans continue to change. Life in the ocean is rarely solitary, and sea cucumbers participate in a complex web of symbiotic relationships that range from beneficial partnerships to unwelcome parasitism. These interactions reveal the interconnected nature of marine ecosystems and demonstrate how even seemingly simple animals like sea cucumbers serve as hosts and habitats for other creatures. The most famous symbiotic relationship involving sea cucumbers is with pearlfish, slender eel-like fish that have evolved a most unusual living arrangement. These fish, belonging to the family Carapidae, spend their days inside the body cavity of sea cucumbers, entering and exiting through the anus. When night falls, the pearlfish emerges, head first to hunt for small crustaceans and other prey. Before dawn, it returns to the safety of its host, locating the sea cucumber and backing in through the anus and cloaca, entering the respiratory trees or main body cavity where it remains until the next evening. For the pearlfish, this arrangement provides excellent protection from predators and a stable environment with regulated temperature and oxygen levels. For the sea cucumber, the relationship is generally considered commensal, meaning the pearlfish benefits, while the sea cucumber is neither helped nor harmed, though some researchers suggest the fish may cause minor irritation or stress. Some sea cucumber species have evolved anal teeth, small calcified structures around the cloaca that may help regulate which organisms can enter or serve to exclude or eject unwanted guests. Several species of small shrimp have evolved to live on or among sea cucumbers. These cleaner shrimp, particularly species in the genus Periclymens, scavenge food particles from the sea cucumber's body surface and may help clean the animal of debris and parasites. The shrimp benefit from the food and protection provided by the host's size and chemical defenses, while the sea cucumber potentially benefits from being kept clean. These shrimp are often beautifully colored, with transparent or pale bodies marked with bright stripes or spots that make them visible against the sea cucumber's darker skin. Small crabs also associate with sea cucumbers, either living on the body surface or sheltering beneath them. Some crab species are highly specialized, found almost exclusively with particular sea cucumber species. The crabs gain protection from the sea cucumber's toxins, which predators learn to avoid, and may feed on particles stirred up by the sea cucumber's feeding activities or on parasites and debris on the sea cucumber's skin. Polychaete worms, particularly those in the family Pollinoidae, have evolved symbiotic relationships with sea cucumbers. These scale worms can live in the sea cucumber's cloaca or respiratory trees, similar to pearlfish. They're small and flattened, with specialized scales covering their backs that protect them from the sea cucumber's internal environment. Like pearlfish, they gain protection from the host while likely having minimal impact on the sea cucumber itself. Parasites are an inevitable part of life for most animals, and sea cucumbers are no exception. Various parasites have evolved to exploit these abundant hosts. Some parasitic snails attach to the body surface and drill into the tissues to feed on body fluids. Certain parasitic copepods, tiny crustaceans, burrow into the skin or attach to the digestive tract. These parasites rarely kill their hosts but can cause damage and weaken the sea cucumber, potentially making it more vulnerable to disease or predation. Protozoan single-celled organisms sometimes infect sea cucumber tissues, particularly the gonads. These infections can reduce reproductive output or cause tissue damage. Bacterial infections can also affect sea cucumbers, especially individuals already weakened by stress or injury. Disease outbreaks in wild populations are rarely documented, but in aquaculture settings where sea cucumbers are held at high densities, bacterial and protozoan diseases can cause significant mortality. Beyond these direct relationships, sea cucumbers modify their environment in ways that benefit other organisms. The burrows they create in sediment provide shelter for small worms, crustaceans, and mollusks. The fecal castings they produce create unique microhabitats with different sediment properties that some organisms prefer. The nutrients they release stimulate primary production that benefits the entire food web. In this way, sea cucumbers serve as ecosystem engineers, their presence creating and maintaining habitats that many other species depend upon. Some species of algae grow on the surfaces of sea cucumbers, taking advantage of the mobile substrate to reach better light conditions or to access nutrients. The sea cucumber gains minimal benefit from this relationship, but generally tolerates the algal growth unless it becomes excessive. In some cases, the algae may provide camouflage, helping the sea cucumber blend into its surroundings. Predators also form important relationships with sea cucumbers, though these are obviously less beneficial for the cucumbers themselves. Certain large starfish specialize in hunting sea cucumbers, using their tube feet to grip the soft body and their everted stomachs to digest the tissues. These starfish have evolved tolerance to sea cucumber toxins and can overcome the animal's defenses. The sea cucumbers, in turn, may exhibit avoidance behaviors, moving away when they detect the chemical signature of a predatory starfish. The complex web of interactions surrounding sea cucumbers highlights their ecological importance. They're not isolated individuals, but nodes in a network, connected to dozens of other species through predation, symbiosis, competition, and mutualism. Remove sea cucumbers from an ecosystem, and these connections are severed, potentially affecting many other species. This interconnectedness is a hallmark of healthy ecosystems, where species depend on each other in ways both obvious and subtle. The diversity of sea cucumbers spans an astonishing range of forms, sizes, and lifestyles. While the general public might picture all sea cucumbers as similar lumpy cylinders, the reality is far more varied. The 1,700-plus species currently recognized showcase evolution's creativity in adapting the basic holothurian body plan to countless ecological niches across the global ocean. The largest group, containing about half of all species, is the order Aspidachirotida. These are the sea cucumbers most people picture, with stout bodies and 10 to 30 shield-like or leaf-like tentacles. They're primarily deposit feeders, including many of the commercially important species harvested for food. Species in the genus Holothuria, one of the most diverse genera, are found throughout tropical and subtropical waters, with different species specializing in different habitats and sediment types. The genus Stichopus includes some of the most valuable commercial species, large animals with thick body walls that are prized in Asian markets. The black teatfish and white teatfish, species in the genus Holothuria, represent the extreme end of commercial value. These large sea cucumbers, reaching lengths of 60 centimeters or more, have thick, muscular body walls that process into high-quality dried product. They're named for the distinctive teat-like projections on their body surface. Unfortunately, their value has led to severe overfishing, and both species are now listed as vulnerable to extinction. The order Dendrochirotida contains suspension feeders with highly branched, tree-like tentacles. These are often smaller, more delicate animals found in areas of moderate water flow where they can extend their tentacles into currents. Some species in this order have adapted to living on hard substrates like coral reefs or rocky walls, where they can position themselves to capture passing food particles. The genus Cucumaria includes many common temperate water species, often found in tide pools or shallow subtidal areas. Sea apples, in the genus Pseudocolochirus, are striking members of this order. They're nearly spherical, brightly colored in reds, purples, yellows, and oranges, with elaborately branched tentacles that they extend to feed. Their vivid colors and unusual shape make them popular in aquarium trade, though they're challenging to keep as they require specific water conditions and can release toxins when stressed that kill other aquarium inhabitants. The order Apodida represents a radical departure from the typical sea cucumber form. These are worm-like species that have lost their tube feet entirely, moving instead by sinuous body contractions. They're often elongated and slender, some species reaching lengths of several meters while remaining narrow. They live burrowed in sediment or under rocks, emerging to feed with their simple or pinnate tentacles. The genus Synapta includes the longest sea cucumber species, the snake sea cucumber Synapta maculata, which can exceed 3 meters in length despite being relatively narrow. Deep-sea sea cucumbers have evolved remarkable adaptations to life in the abyss. Many species in the order Elacipodida have developed fin-like extensions of their body wall that allow them to swim above the seafloor, looking more like strange fish than traditional sea cucumbers. Others have become gelatinous, their bodies mostly water with minimal tissue, an adaptation to the nutrient-poor conditions of the deep sea, where building and maintaining muscle is energetically expensive. These species often appear bizarre to human eyes, with translucent bodies, elaborate appendages, and strange proportions. The sea pig, Scotoplanes globosa, is perhaps the most famous deep-sea sea cucumber, thanks to numerous deep-sea camera deployments that have captured these pink, plump animals wandering across abyssal plains. They have enlarged tube feet that elevate their bodies above the seafloor, giving them an appearance somewhat reminiscent of a pig on legs, though they're still clearly echinoderms. These animals feed on organic matter that settles to the seafloor, playing a crucial role in deep-sea nutrient cycling. Abyssal sea cucumbers can occur in enormous numbers. Some species aggregate in dense herds, hundreds or thousands of individuals gathering in areas where food accumulates. These aggregations may be related to feeding efficiency, reproductive purposes, or both. Scientists exploring the deep sea have encountered seafloors literally carpeted with sea cucumbers, representing a significant proportion of the total animal biomass in these ecosystems. Some species have evolved bioluminescence, the ability to produce light, This is particularly common in deep-sea forms, where natural light never penetrates. The bioluminescence may serve to startle predators, communicate with potential mates, or confuse attackers. When disturbed, some species emit glowing clouds of mucus, creating a luminous smokescreen that allows escape while the predator investigates the glowing distraction. Size variation across species is extreme. At the smallest end, species like Rhabdomolgus ruber measure just a few millimeters as adults, small enough to live in the spaces between sand grains. At the largest end, species like Synapta maculata can exceed 3 meters. The heaviest species, including various members of the genus Thalenauta, can weigh several kilograms. This size range reflects adaptations to different food sources, predation pressures, and habitat constraints. Coloration ranges from drab camouflage to vivid display. Many species are brown, gray, or black, matching the sediments where they live. Others are bright red, orange, yellow, or purple. Some display patterns of spots, stripes, or mottling. The pineapple sea cucumber, the Lenota ananas, is covered with striking patterns of large raised bumps that give it a texture reminiscent of pineapple skin. The tiger tail sea cucumber sports bold black and white stripes. These colors may serve various functions: camouflage, warning coloration, indicating toxicity, or simply be incidental to other adaptations. Habitat specialization has driven much of this diversity. Species living on coral reefs face different challenges than those in seagrass beds, sandy lagoons, rocky reefs, or abyssal plains. Food availability, predation pressure, substrate type, water movement, temperature, salinity, and countless other factors vary across habitats, and sea cucumbers have evolved specific adaptations to match. This specialization means that most species have relatively restricted geographic ranges and habitat preferences, though some generalist species can be found across wide areas and in multiple habitat types. The diversity of sea cucumbers reminds us that evolution is an ongoing process, constantly generating new variations and testing them against environmental challenges. Each species represents a unique solution to the problem of survival, a particular combination of traits that works in its specific context. This diversity is not just aesthetically fascinating but ecologically crucial, as different species perform different roles in ecosystem function. A coral reef with 20 sea cucumber species is functionally richer than one with only 5, as each species processes sediment in slightly different ways, releases nutrients in different patterns, and supports different symbiotic relationships. The human relationship with sea cucumbers is ancient and complex, spanning subsistence use, commercial exploitation, cultural significance, and modern conservation challenges. In many coastal cultures, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region, sea cucumbers have been harvested for food and medicine for centuries or even millennia. Today, they support significant commercial fisheries worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually, but this exploitation has pushed many species toward the brink of extinction. In traditional Chinese medicine and cuisine, sea cucumbers, known as hai shen or sea ginseng, are considered a luxury delicacy and medicinal food. They're believed to provide numerous health benefits, from improving joint health to enhancing immune function to serving as an aphrodisiac. Whether these benefits are real or perceived is debated, though some research suggests that sea cucumber tissues do contain bioactive compounds with potential pharmacological properties, including anti-inflammatory and anti-tumor effects. The preparation of sea cucumbers for consumption is an elaborate process. Fresh sea cucumbers are gutted and then boiled, sometimes repeatedly, to remove toxins and soften the tissues. They're then dried, a process that can take days or weeks, resulting in a hard, dark product called bêche de mer, trepang, or balate, depending on the region. This dried product can be stored indefinitely and is traded globally, with the highest quality specimens fetching extraordinary prices in Asian markets. A kilogram of premium bêche de mer from species like white teatfish can sell for over $1,000 in Hong Kong or Guangzhou. The harvesting of sea cucumbers has a boom and bust history dating back centuries. Early trade in trepang occurred throughout the Pacific, with coastal peoples in regions from Australia to Papua New Guinea to the Philippines, collecting sea cucumbers and trading them to Chinese merchants. As more accessible populations were depleted, fishing expanded to new areas, following a serial depletion pattern that continues today. When populations in one region crash, fisheries move to new areas, and the cycle repeats. The modern sea cucumber fishery is global in scale. Countries in Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, South America, Africa, and even temperate regions participate in supplying the Asian market. The fishery is characterized by minimal regulation, limited monitoring, and a tendency toward overfishing. Many sea cucumbers are easily collected by hand at low tide or through simple diving, making entry into the fishery accessible to coastal communities, but also making populations vulnerable to rapid depletion. Certain biological characteristics make sea cucumbers particularly vulnerable to overfishing. They grow slowly, taking years to reach reproductive maturity. They have relatively low reproductive rates compared to many marine invertebrates, with each female producing offspring only once or twice per year. They often aggregate in groups, making them easy to harvest in large numbers, and their sedentary nature means they can't flee from collectors. Once a population is depleted, recovery can take decades if it occurs at all. In some areas, fisheries have removed over 90% of the population, leaving behind scattered individuals that may be too dispersed to successfully reproduce. The consequences of this overfishing extend beyond the loss of sea cucumber populations themselves. The ecosystem services they provide, nutrient cycling, sediment processing, bioturbation, begin to decline. Coral reefs may grow more slowly, seagrass beds may become less productive, sediments may become less healthy. Research comparing areas with and without sea cucumbers has documented these effects, though they're often subtle and take time to become apparent. The slow gardeners of the ocean floor are being removed faster than they can reproduce, and the gardens they tend are beginning to suffer. Conservation efforts have increased in recent years as the severity of the problem has become clear. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has assessed sea cucumber species and listed 16 as vulnerable or endangered. 3 species have been listed on site: the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which regulates international trade in threatened species. These listings require exporting countries to ensure that trade is sustainable, providing a framework for better management. Several countries have established closed seasons, minimum size limits, or total bans on sea cucumber fishing to allow populations to recover. Aquaculture represents a potential alternative to wild harvest. Sea cucumbers can be cultured in coastal ponds or sea pens, though success varies widely among species. Some tropical species like Holothuria scabra have been cultured successfully, reaching marketable size in 1 to 2 years under optimal conditions. Other species have proven more challenging to culture, with high mortality during larval rearing or slow growth rates making production economically marginal. Aquaculture cannot replace wild fisheries entirely, as cultured animals are generally smaller and less valuable than wild-caught ones, but it can supplement supply and reduce pressure on wild populations. Some aquaculture operations have explored integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, where sea cucumbers are cultured alongside fish in a system that takes advantage of sea cucumber waste processing abilities. The sea cucumbers consume excess feed and feces from the fish, cleaning the environment while growing to marketable size themselves. This approach makes environmental and economic sense, turning waste into a valuable product while improving water quality. Beyond food, sea cucumbers have attracted interest for other applications. Their collagen, which can shift between soft and rigid states, has potential uses in biomedical devices. The adhesive proteins from Cuvierian tubules might inspire new surgical glues. Compounds extracted from sea cucumber tissues show promise in treating various health conditions, from arthritis to cancer. These potential applications add to the economic value of sea cucumbers while also providing additional reasons to conserve them. The relationship between humans and sea cucumbers highlights fundamental questions about how we value and manage ocean resources. Sea cucumbers provide services that benefit entire ecosystems, yet they're harvested primarily for a luxury market. Their populations are being depleted for short-term profit, despite the long-term costs to ecosystem health and future harvests. Finding a sustainable balance will require better regulation, more comprehensive scientific understanding of population dynamics, greater public awareness of their ecological importance, and probably most importantly, reducing demand through education and possibly through finding alternatives that satisfy cultural preferences without depleting wild populations. The future of sea cucumbers hangs in a precarious balance. Without improved management and conservation action, many species face continued declines and possibly extinction. With appropriate measures, including marine protected areas, regulated harvest, aquaculture development, and ecosystem-based management that considers their ecological roles, populations could recover and provide sustainable benefits to both ecosystems and human communities. The slow gardeners of the ocean floor need protection if they're to continue their vital work maintaining the health of marine ecosystems. As we drift toward the close of our journey tonight, let's gather together the threads of understanding we've woven through these explorations of sea cucumber biology and ecology. These remarkable animals, so often overlooked or underappreciated, reveal themselves to be fundamental components of healthy ocean ecosystems. Their slow movements across the seafloor, their patient processing of sediments, their recycling of nutrients, all these activities combine to maintain conditions that countless other species depend upon. Think about the coral reef, a riot of color and life that exists in waters so nutrient-poor they've been called marine deserts. The reef thrives partly because of the tireless work of sea cucumbers, processing organic matter and releasing nutrients in forms corals and algae can use, mixing sediments to prevent suffocation, buffering acidic conditions that would otherwise dissolve coral skeletons. Remove the sea cucumbers, and the reef becomes less productive, less diverse, less resilient to the environmental stresses it faces. Consider the seagrass meadow, underwater gardens that provide nursery habitat for countless fish species, feeding grounds for sea turtles and manatees, and carbon storage that helps moderate climate change. Sea cucumbers dwelling among the grass blades contribute to the health of these meadows through nutrient provision and sediment processing. The meadows grow more vigorously with sea cucumbers present, the positive effects rippling through the ecosystem. Imagine the abyssal plain, thousands of meters deep where darkness is absolute and food is scarce. Here too, sea cucumbers are crucial players, sometimes the dominant large animals, processing the meager rain of organic particles from above, recycling nutrients in an ecosystem operating on the slimmest of margins. They connect the surface ocean to the deep, serving as one of the final links in the chain that moves energy and nutrients from sunlit waters to the deepest trenches. The defenses of sea cucumbers, spectacular and strange, remind us that evolution finds creative solutions to survival challenges. The ability to expel internal organs and regenerate them, to shoot sticky threads from the rear end, to become toxic, rigid, or nearly liquid. All these adaptations speak to the pressures these animals face and the ingenuity of biological evolution. These mechanisms also offer insights that could benefit human medicine and technology, another reason to value and protect these creatures. Their life cycle, with its transformation from microscopic drifting larvae to bottom-dwelling adults, connects sea cucumbers to the broader ocean. The larvae drift in currents, potentially traveling vast distances, linking populations and colonizing new areas. They serve as food for planktonic predators, participating in food webs quite different from those their parents inhabit. This dual lifestyle, planktonic larva and benthic adult, is shared with many marine invertebrates and reflects the interconnected nature of ocean ecosystems. The diversity of sea cucumbers, with over 1,700 species occupying every ocean habitat, demonstrates the success of their basic body plan. From the tiniest species living between sand grains to the 3-meter giants of tropical reefs, from shallow tide pools to the deepest trenches, holothurians have proven remarkably adaptable. This diversity is itself valuable, representing millions of years of evolutionary experimentation and providing insurance against environmental changes that might threaten individual species. The symbiotic relationships sea cucumbers participate in, from the pearlfish living in their body cavities to the shrimp cleaning their surfaces, illustrate the complex webs of interaction that characterize healthy ecosystems. These relationships evolved over long periods, each species adapting to the presence of others, developing dependencies and partnerships. When sea cucumbers disappear, these relationships are severed, and the animals that depended on them must find new hosts or face decline themselves. The human impact on sea cucumbers, particularly the overfishing that has depleted populations across much of the tropics, represents a significant conservation challenge. These animals that have existed for hundreds of millions of years, that survived ice ages and mass extinctions, are now threatened by overharvest for a luxury food market. The irony is profound. We're removing the gardeners that maintain the productivity of ocean ecosystems for short-term economic gain, potentially causing long-term environmental costs far exceeding the value of the harvest. Yet there is hope. Awareness of the ecological importance of sea cucumbers is growing. Conservation measures are being implemented. International trade regulations are beginning to address the most threatened species. Aquaculture is developing as an alternative to wild harvest. Scientific understanding of sea cucumber biology, ecology, and population dynamics is improving, providing the knowledge needed for effective management. If these efforts continue and expand, sea cucumber populations could recover, and their vital ecosystem services could be preserved. The story of sea cucumbers is ultimately a reminder that every species, no matter how humble or obscure, plays roles in maintaining the health and function of ecosystems. The slow gardeners of the ocean floor, processing sediments grain by grain, recycling nutrients molecule by molecule, are as essential to the ocean as the magnificent whales, graceful dolphins, and fearsome sharks that capture our imagination more readily. Understanding and appreciating these less charismatic species is crucial if we're to preserve the full complexity and resilience of ocean life. As you continue to drift towards sleep, carry with you the image of a sea cucumber slowly moving across a sandy bottom, its tentacles gathering sediment, its body processing nutrients, its presence contributing to the health of the reef or seagrass bed or rocky shore it calls home. These animals have been doing this work for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans walked the earth, and with proper care and conservation, they'll continue for millions of years more. They are ancient, patient, essential workers in the vast gardens of the ocean floor. The ocean is full of wonders, from the spectacular to the subtle, from the mighty to the modest. Tonight we've explored one of those subtle wonders, a group of animals that might seem unremarkable at first glance, but reveal themselves to be extraordinary upon closer examination. The sea cucumbers, slow gardeners, patient processors, essential recyclers, are part of what makes the ocean function, part of what maintains the productivity and diversity we depend upon. Rest now in the knowledge that beneath the waves, even in this moment, countless sea cucumbers are doing their quiet work. They're processing sediments, releasing nutrients, mixing layers, creating habitats, supporting symbionts, and maintaining the health of ecosystems, both shallow and deep, tropical and polar, near shore and abyssal. The ocean's gardens are being tended, as they have been for eons, by creatures that ask nothing more than to be left to continue their ancient work. Let the rhythm of their existence, slow and steady, patient and persistent, lull you deeper into rest. Let the knowledge of their importance and resilience provide comfort. Let the wonder of their biology and ecology, from evisceration to Cuvierian tubules to regeneration to nutrient cycling, occupy your mind as thought gradually gives way to sleep. The sea cucumbers will continue their work through the night, through the coming day, through seasons and years and centuries, as long as we give them the chance. Sleep well, knowing that the ocean's slow gardeners are tending to their underwater gardens, maintaining the delicate balances that support so much life. And perhaps when you next encounter the ocean, whether wading in shallow water or gazing out at the horizon, you'll remember what's happening on the seafloor below. You'll remember the sea cucumbers, humble but essential, going about their patient work in the gardens of the deep. Good night.